Huge win for the Ohio State Buckeyes on Saturday afternoon, 66-17 against the Maryland Terrapins. A pretty darn impressive performance. Buckeyes had a lot of things they wanted to try to get right before going into the bye, and they most certainly went into the bye week on a high note. We've got our post-game show live from Ohio Stadium, instant analysis, the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Maryland Terrapins, breaking it all down for you, our immediate reactions live in Columbus. It's coming up next on Buckeye Breakdown.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All-Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Ohio Stadium. This is Buckeye Breakdown, instant analysis. Ohio State 66, Maryland 17. Buckeyes a resounding win here to wrap up the first half of the season. I'm Brendan Gulick with Andrew Lind, Coach Tommy Zagorski joining us from his palatial estates back in Wadsworth, Ohio. Coach, we're going to give you the first word today because you were so close to nailing the final score in your prediction last night. What'd you think of the Buckeyes here this afternoon?
Brendan, when you go 59-17 and then you see what would some say a meaningless interception, which is a historic interception for a touchdown to make it 66-17, really just a dominant performance across the board. You see the Buckeyes 5 of 5 in the red zone, coming away with 31 points in the red zone. There was just a lot of fun things to watch, and this really was another step forward as a defense and an offense. From a defensive perspective, the biggest thing that you have to look at, you finally went into the stat sheet and you found linebackers at the top of it. You see Cody Simon, you see Tommy Eichenberg, you see these linebackers, Taraja Mitchell, all these guys are in this list that you see that are having these incredible days, for the Buckeyes, and Steel Chambers is the other one I omitted. But, you see those guys, get up there in the stat sheet. They're starting to play good, sound defense, and it was a lot of fun to watch.
Andrew, I think that's a great place to start because even though today was an offensive explosion kind of day, and we'll get to C.J. Stroud and the fireworks on the offensive side, I totally agree with that because the defense today, to me, made a bigger statement. The linebacking core, I thought, played absolutely its best game through its first 6. Steel Chambers was all over the field. Cody Simon played great. Tommy Eichenberg had good tackles. Taraja Mitchell played well. I mean, this group, to me, has shown considerable growth, and boy, did they need that from where they were a month ago.
Yeah, and I think that my biggest concern coming off the last couple of weeks was the fact that Ronnie Hickman was the leading tackler on defense several weeks in a row, and that's not necessarily a good thing to have your safety be the leading tackler. So to then have, Steel Chambers running all over the field, Tommy Eichenberg, Taraja Mitchell, and so on getting involved, that's obviously a great sign for a unit that is still trying to piece together and still figuring things out at this point.
I'm obviously impressed with the linebacking core, but Z, I know we've talked a lot about how the defensive line needed to be better about creating pressure and speeding up the opposing quarterback. You and I talked this week about DJ Irons maybe being the best athlete the Buckeyes had seen at that position to date. I don't know if you're willing or ready to compare DJ Irons to Taulia Tagovailoa. They obviously have a similar skill set, but I thought Ohio State up front did a great job of speeding up Taulia's clock and just making him uncomfortable. 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. It was a really good day for that unit.
Yeah, they did a phenomenal job. I thought the defensive line and the guy that I really wanted to see play well today was Zach Harrison. That blatant holding penalty early in the game. I think that was kind of like the wake-up call that these guys can't block the Ohio State defensive linemen. And credit to Larry Johnson. He's done such a phenomenal job in developing these guys. And I think, one of the things you watch as a fan, these guys come in with a lot of stars next to your name, and you expect them to just produce right away. If that were the case, they wouldn't hire coaches. They would just let these guys go play intramurals. So I really give credit to Larry Johnson. He's developing these guys. JTT gets in the stat category with a sack. You have Jack Sawyer, who makes another great play in open space. These guys are growing. They're getting better, and the rest of the defense is reaping the benefits.
I just love that Jack Sawyer seems to draw a holding penalty every single game. I mean, even though his stat line might not jump off the page in terms of tackles or sacks or pressures, this dude is making a huge difference on getting plays blown up in the backfield. And I know for sure that the coaching staff has taken notice of that because he has gotten increased playing time each and every week. It's fun to watch this defensive end group knowing that they've got some high-end talent that is, maybe a bit more veteran. But obviously with JT Tuimoloau and with Jack Sawyer continuing to play better and better, they're halfway through their freshman seasons now, and they are further ahead than most freshmen are going to be at any point during their career.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting the fact that Larry Johnson had spoke about Jack Sawyer and said that he was more of a finesse player maybe than JT was. JT's more powerful. And I think that really shows in these situations where he is kind of drawing like the attention of, maybe multiple blockers or, just being able to kind of navigate his way around an offensive tackle. So I think you're really starting to see that come to form. And, he's only going to get better. And it is really crazy to think that, eventually these two are going to be on opposite sides, pinning their ears back and really just coming after it.
Know quite a few of you are watching us live at home. If you're interested, we'd love your participation. Please drop your questions or your comments in, and we'll try to address some of those along the way. Let's go back to maybe the interception component of this because it was historic. Ohio State, a fourth consecutive game with a pick six. It's their fifth defensive touchdown in the first 6 games of the year. I don't know if we would have thought after the Maryland game when we were at the Minnesota game, if we'd be talking about a defense that has 5 touchdowns in 6 games and is playing as well as they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really what it comes down to is the defense is just being a lot more aggressive than they have been all season. And, they're really just flying around. And I've said this in weeks past, having younger guys back there just who want to make a play, and that's really happening. And then to have Craig Young, of all people come in and do that and his opportunity to shine, it really is just, you can pretty much plug anybody in those situations and they're ready to get their hands on the ball and take it the other way.
Absolutely, Andrew. They're tackling better in space, which gives them the opportunity to be more opportunistic. It allows Matt Barnes to call a more aggressive style of defense. It also gives him the ability to let those guys go play, and you're seeing them reap the benefits of it. It's been an awesome aspect of it. But one of the things that, you think about today, really that I thought was really exciting to watch was, Emeka Egbuka. I mean, as a kickoff return man today, I think he yielded almost 197 yards in the kick return game.
Crazy.
I mean, it was 60, I think it was 165. Correct me if I'm wrong. On kickoff returns. It was fun to see him and to show that this room is so deep that you have this guy waiting there on the sidelines. And then when he gets his opportunity, he capitalizes on it. And this is what great football teams, not good football teams, great football teams do. I'm not anointing this team on the level of Alabama and Georgia yet, but they are quietly creeping up that ladder and trying to make reservations for that extra bowl game around Christmas time.
And I do think that there is a lot to be said about the fact that he is only a freshman. And he said today in his press conference after the game that, they're encouraging him at every opportunity to take it out and make a play because they know that he can. So, to have him in that situation, that's obviously a great thing.
I mean, he had 4 kick returns, and you were right. It was about 166 yards, I think, was the official number. It's as well as I can remember a single guy having an impact on a game. Returning kicks for the Buckeyes. I should know this off the top of my head. I'm sorry I don't. Maybe one of you guys do.
Jordan Hall in 2010.
There it is. It's been, I was going to say, it's been a long time since the Buckeyes housed a kick. And I thought there was a decent chance when Emeka broke one up the left sideline that today might be the day. And he just couldn't quite finish off the play. But again, it's just one more area for an offense that has shown time and time again this quick strike, deep ball capability. You get a guy in a kick return game that's giving the offense a short field. I mean, that is so deflating as a defense to think like, oh, gee, all right, they're already on the 30-yard line. Here we go. So the Buckeyes special teams today get a thumbs up, even though did Jesse Merkel punt? I don't think he did.
Not that I recall.
Yeah, I know he didn't through at least the first 3 quarters. I was trying to think about the fourth quarter.
He did not today. He did not.
Did not punt. Yeah, I mean CJ Stroud, as let's transition to the offense here. CJ Stroud, through the last 2 weeks now, with basically the 2 quarters plus 1 drive he played against Rutgers, and then what he did today through 3 quarters. Ohio State not only didn't turn the ball over, they literally scored on every drive that he led up the field with 1 field goal, and everything else was a touchdown. I mean, it was absolutely unstoppable, unbelievable for an offense that continues to lead college football in yards per game. They had 598 today. They averaged 8.4 yards per play today. That's literally their season average. That's ridiculous. And for a good chunk of the day, it was a little bit of a struggle to get going offensively. But man, I'm telling you, just a really, really fun day to watch a guy go out there and play quarterback like that.
Yeah, I mean, CJ today had 5 touchdowns, over 400 yards, and no interceptions. He's the first player in Ohio State history to ever do that, which is remarkable. But also looking back at it, Ohio State didn't throw the forward pass till after Woody Hayes left, so you're looking probably somewhere in the 1980s. But in addition to that, also he's the first Buckeye quarterback to go back-to-back games with 5 touchdown passes. It goes back to, I believe, Dwayne Haskins was the last one to do that. So it's a unique stat. It's a unique ability for him to really kind of come into his own. I know there were a lot of rumblings about him early in the season, but I think he's putting a lot of those to bed right now. CJ is throwing the ball effectively. He's managing and engineering the offense. One of the things that I can't stress enough about this young man is, A, his head on his shoulders. He makes great decisions with the football. Secondly, his ability in the pocket to maneuver around. And not to take away from Ohio State's offensive line, which Bruce Feldman today, one of the guys at The Athletic and for Fox Sports, he appraised this team as if this offensive line could be the best offensive line in college football, which is a bold statement to make at this early in the stage of the season. But when there are pressure moments, he steps up, he moves around, he extends the play, and it's not by running. He steps up into the pocket, and what that means is he's being confident in his ability to get the ball downfield, and really they're reaping the benefits. I mean, the touchdown to Olave, on the play action, he had a guy in his face. He could have easily tried to run out of it or whatever, but he stepped up, made the throw, followed through, and guys were running free all day. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Well, I think to your point, though, is a lot of that has to do with him just being comfortable and being healthy. If you're being honest, because if he's not healthy and he's worrying about his shoulder, he's not going to step up into those situations, and he's not going to try to maybe make a play with his legs like we've seen him do in the last couple of weeks. He is a little bit more apt to tuck the ball and run for something that maybe wasn't there before, and I think that obviously extends drives. That makes the offense a little bit more dynamic. I know we saw a lot of that back in 2018 with Dwayne Haskins when he did not run the ball. They started to be a little bit, maybe one-dimensional, and you kind of saw that a little bit early in the season with CJ, and then obviously, the more that he's involved running the ball in addition to passing the ball, and the more that the running backs get involved, the easier it makes it for him.
RK pops in and says, any word on Brown or Haskell? I assume he means Cam Brown and obviously Haskell Garrett. A couple guys that are, I think, going to be really critical pieces for this defense if they're going to achieve their goals of trying to win a championship this year. We did not get an update on Cam Brown in the postgame press conference. Ryan Day said Haskell Garrett's injury was something that he'd been dealing with for a bit, and that the hope is that he can get him healthy during the bye week. There wasn't really a discussion on whether or not it was something that was long-term. I think good news on the Haskell Garrett front, he went into the medical tent and then left the tent, came back and sat on the bench. I would think if it was something more serious that he wouldn't have been on the sideline. So I'm encouraged by that. Cameron Brown, I don't want to speculate at the nature of an injury, but he needed some serious help getting off the field. It was good that he walked off, but Cam got hit pretty hard and was clearly pretty woozy. I didn't see him after he was in the medical tent, but have to imagine that he's going to need a little bit of time to get right.
Yeah, and I think that obviously having the open week next week, I refuse to call it a bye week, but we'll get into that maybe another time. I think that heading into that, I think it's a very important thing that they were relatively healthy besides Haskell, and Tyreek Smith was out today, and then obviously Cam having his injury. But I think that going into that week and then having that extra week to kind of maybe rest some things, and that'll obviously help as they go into the back half of the schedule.
Travion Henderson had a more pedestrian day, shall we say, Coach Z. I think I should at least take credit for last night when I said that Travion Henderson was going to have a good game, but by his own standards was going to have a more pedestrian performance, because the guy was literally at 9.4 yards per carry through his first 5 games. That is completely ridiculous. He was at a much more manageable, reasonable 6.4 yards per carry today. Did end up with 100 yards. He was 16 carries for 102. Longest run of the day was 17 yards. He didn't have any huge long runs today. Did score a couple of touchdowns with his legs and then had another one through the air. I think that's one of the things that I so enjoy about watching him play. He is so versatile. And I thought, with the exception of the one screen pass that he caught and housed week 1 against Minnesota, I really enjoyed watching him out of the backfield today because he was clearly a big part of the check down game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of interesting that if he had over 100 yards and it didn't even really feel that way, I think that says a lot about how he's been playing in the first, 5 weeks of the season, that, you kind of expect these big plays to come from him, and, to still then go over 100 yards is really impressive. But I do think that adds an extra layer to the offense as well, with the fact that, if CJ goes through his progressions and then, one of the many talented wide receivers are not open, then he can check it down to Travion. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're going to have another 70-yard touchdown out of the backfield when you weren't really expecting it. So I think that's a really great thing to have.
Yeah, it's a big part of it. And, one of the things that's great is Ryan Davis today really went back to the air raid offense. He ran mesh, which is basically a crossing route with 2 of the receivers, because there was a lot of man coverage going into this game with Maryland's defense. So you run a lot of these rub concepts, and with those rub concepts, every single one of those mesh type concepts, and you have different ways of calling it. And you have 2 layers. You have a guy over the top or over the box route, and then you get somebody out on the wheel, and that's where Travion was. And they were able to just check it down. It's every quarterback's best friend. They talk about being a check down monster, but it's built in to what they really did early in the passing game, and it got him going a little bit. To have him have, I think it was something like 67 yards actually, receiving today. In accordance with 102 yards on the ground. Brendan, you did call it last night. You did say he would be somewhere in the realm of 6 to 7 yards, which is very pedestrian for Travion Henderson. It's a superhuman account for any other person that's watching. Anyone that's listening, if you're on the Doak Walker award watch list, or you're a Doak Walker award voter, how this guy isn't the top guy in the country for this award right now absolutely blows my mind. We're witnessing history every single week, and it's a lot of fun to see 32 in the scarlet and gray.
And let's just say it again for punctuation's sake. He did not play his senior year of high school. He literally didn't play a live game from his junior year until Minnesota. And he's doing this across now a couple of different Big Ten defenses. He played well against Oregon. I mean, he is so unbelievably special and cut from a different cloth. I just hope people really appreciate what they've got here, because to me, it's easy to sit here as an Ohio State fan and have really lofty expectations, to know that you've got highly recruited, really talented guys. It doesn't always work that great. Sometimes the recruiting rankings are what they are when you're in high school, and for whatever reason, it doesn't translate to the college game. One of the things Ohio State has done so well over the last now 20 years is figure out a way to minimize those swings and misses. But it's still that much more noticeable when you see a guy like Travion Henderson, obviously a home run type kid. I hope people are not taking for granted what he's doing.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that there's still 2.5 years at least of his career, which obviously, you're going to want to appreciate every single part of that. But I think that, there's downsides to maybe not playing your senior year of high school. But then when it comes to a running back, of his stature, maybe that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because he seems like a kid, and I think he's talked about it a bit too, with just how much he stayed focused, off the field and just in the weight room and those kind of things when he wasn't playing. So, for him to get bigger and faster and stronger while not taking those hits in high school, that obviously allows him to stay healthy and be able to make a big impact now.
It was a good note there about Master Teague running hard today too. I enjoyed watching him, and I think he's become a really good change of pace kind of guy. Also, while we're live and talking about running backs, Mayan Williams tweeted during the middle of the game, something to the effect of, "I'm good, I'll be back soon." I don't remember verbatim what he said, but it was along those lines. There's been a lot of people wondering, where the heck is Mayan Williams? He was the starting running back week 1, and had a 70-yard rushing touchdown and to score the first touchdown of the year for the Buckeyes. And the last couple of weeks, he's been unavailable. So whatever he's dealing with, it sounds like he's toward the end of the line with that issue, and he'll be back soon. Z, I want to ask you an impossible question. it's really fun to watch the offense when CJ Stroud and the wide receivers are clicking the way they're clicking, right? And I'm sure some of the answer is that they're both, the quarterback play and the receiver play are elite. How much of this do you think is the receivers making CJ Stroud look really good versus CJ Stroud is playing at such a high level that the receivers are able to elevate their game?
The football chicken or the egg? It is an age-old question that always comes up when a team's lighting it up in the secondary. And right now you see that. Honestly, I think there's a little bit of confidence for CJ. He's throwing to an all-star cast of wide receivers. Brian Hartline's group is deep. They run great routes. They block. They get open. I mean, there are very few times where you see him throwing that. And then also there's a third component to this, Brendan, to even muddy this even more. How about Ryan Day? Ryan Day reinvents himself every week in the passing game, and he figures out ways to go attack people, setting up play action stuff. I alluded to in the opening that he used air raid stuff with the mesh and all the different things, the rub run concepts, to be able to just go throw the football and go with it. I really would be remiss to say that CJ Stroud, if he had a bum group of receivers, wouldn't be doing this. I think the receivers help him. If you held a gun to my head, that would be the one that I would say. But realistically, before we mention those wide receivers, one thing I want to take a step back and mention, every player we've mentioned by name so far in this opener can't legally buy a beer in the state of Ohio. I mean, this group is so young. I mean, we're talking about these guys that are 18, 19, 20 years old. We're talking about Jack Sawyer. We've talked about two guys who didn't play high school football their senior year to get ready for being Ohio State Buckeyes. And I know, Andrew, you made the great point. These guys are going to be around for at least 2.5 years. I think it's really, really special, and I think when Chris Olave is playing on Sundays and Garrett Wilson next year, they're going to look back at this and say, okay, like this makes sense. And, we added a lot of value to this program from that standpoint. And those guys will be missed going forward. But realistically, there are some guys, Emeka is going to be really, really special. We're still waiting to see what Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to look like. And
almost blocked a punt today.
Yeah. And you're just seeing, this is where these guys' opportunities come from. And this is where culturally, this is where this comes from. And everyone keeps talking about Alabama. Alabama's so great. Alabama does this. Watch an Alabama game. Watch Alabama play Texas A&M tonight. You're going to see guys that are 5-star players that aren't getting reps in the traditional sense of football, that are making plays on special teams, that are going to go around and make plays. And when they get in the game, they make a play. And I think that's where Ohio State's getting to. It's been like that for, a little bit of the time in the Urban era, but now Ryan Day's really got this formula going. And I think the guys are buying into it. And it's exciting to see. But as in a roundabout way, this elite receiver room, it's the best in the country. And they're really reaping the benefits of it. It's helping a young quarterback come along his way. When he does maybe not have the best receiver core in the country, he will then be the guy carrying those guys going forward.
I think you made a really good point, though, about, it's very hard right now to say which one is making the other one better. But I think I want to look back to maybe the Akron game. And when Kyle McCord was in there in the game, they kind of got him, passes that were close to build his confidence. And I think that kind of goes the same thing with the wide receiver room as a whole. When CJ first got, under center, they built his confidence because he had great wide receivers. He was able to trust them. And then now he's kind of starting to return the favor for them and put the ball in good places for them and those kind of things. So, maybe it is the wide receivers up front were the reason that he maybe felt more comfortable. But I think that now he's really starting to come into his own. And I think that's really important part of it too. And I think when it comes to the wide receivers and just the amount of talent that they have, I do think it's very important to point back to 2018 when they had Paris Campbell, Johnny Dixon, and Terry McLaurin, because I think without them taking the step that they did in 2018, and, Paris set a record for 1,000, or I believe it was the most yards in school history. I think that, it's just, one of those things to be able to build off of that. It was very important for them to get that in the first place. And kind of like you said, chicken before the egg thing. Now they're able to reap those benefits because of that effort that they put in the first place.
Stroud, 24 of 33 for 406 yards, 5 touchdowns. Those were his final numbers, and a quarterback rating of 226.1. Wow. Pretty wild. And I guess maybe to just wrap up that part of the conversation, the throw to me today that stood out more than any other was the 4th and 1 throw on, you're deep in opponent territory. You got a huge lead, and Ryan Day basically said, Yeah, we're not ready to call the dogs off yet. This is full throttle. Let's go. And they throw a post route. Olave is really well covered. In fact, he was interfered with. The ball hit off of his hands. If you didn't see the play, the highlight's incredible. The referee actually started throwing the flag before Olave regathered the ball and came down on his back and caught a touchdown. You stand there, you watch the play, and you're like, wait, there's no way that actually just happened. Incredible concentration by Olave. It was a well-thrown ball. It was well covered. In fact, it was too well covered because the flag came out. But to me, those are the kinds of things that, like, when you're going right, those things tend to go your way. You know, everybody complains about, we can't get a break if you're trying to get out of a rut. Sometimes when you're so hot, you can't even stop yourself. And I thought that was a highlight play that's going to really stand out for me today.
And Brendan, it also comes back to coaching. It's coaching.
Sure.
These guys concentrate on the football. Jeremy Ruckert on the sideline, the ball that he caught out of bounds that he stayed with. If you notice, he kept his feet in bounds the entire time. He can't levitate.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of things these guys can coach these guys to do. They can't coach them to levitate, but to have the concentration, the wherewithal to do that, that's a series of events that lead up to that. That's going back to in February and March when these guys get back in the facility and working with them on a daily basis, skill development, and these players are really starting to see that correlate. And offensively, that really hasn't been an issue this season. And now that it's starting to translate over to the defensive side of the football, this is going to be a special team to watch going forward.
Yeah, and to that point, I think, Ryan Day talks a lot about how the team practices and how that then turns into things on game day. And I think that's a perfect example of it. If CJ is not comfortable throwing that ball to Chris and he doesn't trust that Chris is going to come down with it, and then Chris doesn't practice making those kind of plays, in practice, like that doesn't happen. So it was kind of weird though when he did come down with that, because the stadium didn't really erupt. It was kind of like, wait, did he catch that? And they weren't really sure, and it was a touchdown, and it was just kind of this like mild little cheer. And you're almost getting to that point where you expect those kind of plays to happen from this offense, and that's pretty crazy in itself.
It's also a very muted celebration, if I remember correctly. It was just a couple of handshakes all the way around from Chris Olave to the guys that came to greet him. Which, is always kind of funny too, because sometimes you have these big boisterous celebrations. The small ones are fun.
Just business.
It's strictly business.
Couple
other quick things here. Ryan Day said the game ball today went to Kerry Combs. He said Kerry Combs obviously been through a lot these last few weeks, but he was incredibly impressed with the attention to detail Kerry has paid the last couple of weeks, and with the way this defense is starting to get it going. We've talked about this ad nauseum, and anybody who follows Ohio State football and knows Kerry Combs knows that he is like literally the ultimate good human being. He is such a good guy. He's a great recruiter. He is so much a fabric of what this team's DNA is all about. And for whatever reason, as a defensive coordinator calling the plays, it just wasn't working well. And no surprise to those who know him, he checked his ego, and now this defense is rolling. And they've got a chance to get healthy with basically now the next 14 days before they go play a game. And they're going to need to make sure they're absolutely peaking, because the second half of the schedule in the Big Ten is going to be significantly more challenging than what the Buckeyes have seen now the last month. I'm not surprised, but I wanted to point out that Ryan Day said, look, Kerry Combs absolutely deserved a game ball today.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to point that out, because like you said, he really did check his ego and say, I'm not doing this for myself, I'm doing this for the best, or what's best for the team, and for him to kind of take that secondary role. And he's obviously comfortable in that. That's what he was before he went off to the NFL and was with the Titans for 2 years. And I think that in turn is making his players more comfortable as well. Maybe he's not calling the plays and not the one who's deciding where they're at on the field, but at the same time, he's in practice. And again, practice is very important. So, whatever he's doing there is obviously working. And, maybe he isn't, the person calling the plays, but he's still a very important part of this team.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before with Kerry, and I have a great relationship with him, and getting to meet him when his first day on the road as an Ohio State Buckeye coach, and just the joy that he had. Kerry's a guy who's paid his dues. He's been a high school coach here in the state of Ohio. He grew up here in Ohio. It means a lot to him. And every day he walks into the Woody, he does not take that for granted. He's very proud of the fact that he's an Ohio State Buckeye coach. I believe I earlier said in the season that if Ryan Day asked him to change the urinal cakes in the facility, he probably would go do it without batting an eye. I mean, that's just the kind of person he is, and it's good to see that, and it's a great representation of humility that's going to be important for these guys going forward. So, one of the big things that Ryan Day wants to cultivate are great husbands, great fathers, great contributors to society. And when they see one of their leaders do things like that, where he checks his ego at the door and recognizes that it's bigger than just him, it's really special for those guys. And they'll look back on this long way down the road and be really appreciative of what he's done for not only them this season, but going forward in their lives.
So the last thing I want to hit on here, as a Buckeye fan, especially this time of year, when you got a feel for how your team is starting to come together, you start seeing some good results. You kind of have one eye on your game and then one eye on some of the other games that could impact your potential future. And holy smokes, was the Oklahoma-Texas game absolutely insanity in the second half. And with a few seconds left in the game, Oklahoma, which was, I think, something like a 96% chance to lose based on the way the game had been playing out, comes back and wins. They don't even need overtime. They just came back and won in the fourth quarter with, I think, 24 points, if I remember what I saw. I don't know, man. The Oklahoma offense must have all of a sudden found something with Caleb Williams instead of Spencer Rattler today. They've clearly been a talented team, but they've just looked so vulnerable. And I continue, as someone who covers the Buckeyes, I continue to look at Oklahoma and think that's the team that I think you need to have lose a game, because if they go undefeated, they're going to make the playoff. If you go undefeated, especially this year with a lot of the teams losing already, and you're playing a Power 5 league, I got to think you're going to get in. Another, one score win for Oklahoma, but it's a win. Texas couldn't quite pull it off today. And the pieces around Ohio State, as you start to think about the teams that are vying for those 4 spots, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, all certainly in that conversation. Cincinnati did what they were supposed to do this weekend. You've got Penn State playing Iowa literally right now as we speak. The winner of that game is going to continue to be right there. But that Oklahoma game, I think, had a lot of people going, wait, wow, that just happened.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to Oklahoma, I mean, I kind of look at them in the same boat that I looked at Notre Dame. Like, it feels like it's just a loss waiting to happen. It just you kind of wonder when it's going to happen. So, I mean, the Big 12 isn't necessarily the greatest conference, so I'm not sure exactly when that's going to happen. But obviously, that they might have to play a team for a second time in the Big 12 championship, with just the way that that's set up. So that might be something to pay attention to. But my real thought when it comes to Oklahoma is like, for them to be in that situation and be down as much as they were, I think that that's something that Ohio State has the ability to do. And I felt that way against Oregon as well. It obviously didn't work out that way because they had, a turnover late, but they still had the ball, with a chance to tie the Oregon game until CJ threw an interception. And I think that, that's something that I'm sure Ohio State is paying attention to and saying, look, Oklahoma was down this much, and they didn't have their best defensive effort in the first half. They put it together in the second half, and sometimes you just have to claw out a win, and really that's what they did. So, I mean, hats off to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma plays Texas in one of the best rivalries. I won't say it's the best. It's one of the best rivalries in college football. And Texas had a lot going for them going into the game. They jumped out early. I think a lot of people were concerned for Oklahoma, but Oklahoma has historical resiliency. And that's kind of a blanket term to use, but that's a team that knows how to get where they need to go. They've got coaches that have done it for them for a long period of time. And I think really, Lincoln Riley is going to figure out the right elixir for those guys. And at the end of the day, it's always like, if you win football games, there's always, like you said, Andrew, these people that look at it and go, they're just a loss waiting to happen. They're still winning tough games, and they're building from that standpoint. I think Oklahoma, that was a big win for them, but I do agree. I do think there's a loss, coming down the pike for them. The one that you look at right now early is, Iowa comes out early against Penn State today. They force a early turnover, can only get a field goal out of it. And really, Iowa hasn't done much since then. It's 17-3 right now in that game. Penn State is looking like they have, the right matchup to really set up a great showdown between the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions back in Columbus.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Thankfully, we have a week off between now and then, and a game against the Indiana Hoosiers coming up on the 23rd, and then the Buckeyes will come back home and play those Nittany Lions. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really impressed again with the offense. Like, to say that, you know, they put up 570 yards of total offense, and it was still just an average day for them. I think we really need to appreciate what we're seeing, because, I mean, I know there's plenty of people who are watching this that can sit there and say they remember when Ohio State's offense couldn't muster anything. You know, it was a struggle to even put up maybe 20 points, and now they're doing that in 3 plays. I mean, today I think there was 6 plays, they had 3 touchdowns. And to me, that's just something that is kind of unfathomable from Ohio State. And I mean, it's really something that's impressive.
Z, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's fun to see the Big Ten compete at a high level for so long, a period of time. You know, for those of us that grew up here in Ohio, all we hear about is that the Big Ten's down, the Big Ten's down, the Big Ten's down. The Big Ten has been a lot of fun to watch this fall, and I think it's going to continue to be that way. And really, as you look at it, you know, we know Alabama and Georgia, we know what they're going to do. They're really kind of on a path to Atlanta to see each other. But there's so much parity in college football right now. It's so much fun to watch. It's so much fun to see these teams jump out and get after it. And really, just kudos to Ryan Day and Matt Barnes and Kerry Combs and Kevin Wilson and really the entire Ohio State staff. They're developing this team. It's a young team. And maybe next year isn't the year. It could be this year. These guys are playing at a really high level. They're clicking on all cylinders. They continue to make great plays with little to no mistakes. Their techniques and like we talked about earlier, practice execution equals game reality, and that's what you're seeing right now with these Ohio State Buckeyes. You know, they have this week to get better, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to struggle. You know, they're going into this week. They're not going to struggle through it. They're not going to take the week off. They're going to really push forward and really try to take the next step as a unit, and that's what great coaches do. That's what great programs do, and that's why the Buckeyes are so elite.
Ohio State certainly didn't get off to the fastest start offensively. A 17-play, 88-yard drive was the longest drive they've had since 2015. They kind of struggled a little bit on first and second downs, but found a way, even actually on a fourth down, to score in that opening drive, and it opened up quite a barrage offensively. They had 5 consecutive touchdown scoring drives before kneeling down on the final play of the half, and then in the second half, 3 straight touchdown drives, a field goal drive, and then turned it over on downs with about 5 minutes to go. 66-17, the final score. Ohio State absolutely pounds the Maryland Terrapins. So the offense got it done. The defense continues to look good, and now the Buckeyes go into the bye with a 5-1 record and are clearly making progress. This team has high hopes, and I think we're seeing why those hopes are very, very real as we get into the middle of October. Hope you enjoyed our post-game coverage. We've got a ton more planned over on BuckeyesNow.com and plenty of stuff actually coming up this week. Even though the team is on a bye, we will hear from Ryan Day, and we're hoping from several assistants and from other players on Tuesday at our normally scheduled 12 noon media appearance. There will not be Wednesday media availability. Ryan Day still will have his radio show on Thursday this week. That's the schedule, even though it's an off week, as you like to call it, for the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll get into that another time. For Coach Tommy Zagorski and for Andrew Lind, I'm Brendan Gulick. Hope you've enjoyed our coverage here from Ohio Stadium. A big win. The Buckeyes 66, Maryland 17. You've been watching Instant Analysis, our Ohio State post-game show here on Buckeyes Now.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State
with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today.
Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.